Welcome to Fielding the 68. My name is Chancellor Johnson, joined by our bracketologists, Rocco Miller and Lucas Harkins. And guys, we have a fun show coming up for our audience as we'll get to our top 16 teams as we reveal that on the show. But first things first, before we get there, I want to set the table. And Rocco, I'll come to you. For people who might not understand as we reveal our list here, why does the NCAA put certain teams in one region versus another team in another region?
Chancellor, Lucas, great to be on with you. Yeah, so that's a loaded question, Chancellor. I would just like to start it off by saying we're focused today really on the top 16. That's the real information we'll get from the real committee tomorrow. And there are evolving rules around this as the super conference era has taken over our great game of college basketball. There are four obvious super conferences, and then, of course, the Big East, which only has 11 teams, so we won't worry about them for the sake of this. But the traditional, for at least for the last handful of years, rules are as follows. The first four teams from a league have to be in different regions. So you basically go from 1 through 16 down the board. What we're finding out this year early on is the Big 10 and the Big 12 have so many elite teams that we have 5 or more in both leagues. And so one of the things the NCAA got in front of this last summer was the simple fact that if they have 5 teams within the top 12, which one of those two leagues certainly will, maybe both, when we find out the real bracket tomorrow, there are looser rules in terms of going straight in order of those first 4. They can move teams around like they couldn't before. So there's more flexibility this year within those first 12 teams than we've seen in the past. So that's something to certainly take note of. In general, as you assign teams, in the top 16 specifically, they are what we call protected seeds, Chancellor. And what protected seeds represent is you cannot play a first round game against a team within the old rule 75 miles. I've noticed over the years it's kind of expanded more to like 100 miles. We saw that with Yale last year being 86 miles away from a site and not being allowed to go there. But in general, that's the idea. And so you go off of the regional first with these top 16. So our 4 regionals this year: Washington, D.C., Chicago, Houston, and San Jose. All right. So from there, it's just a simple pick and pluck and play. After that decision is made with the region, you then go into the sub location for the first 2 rounds. We learned yesterday our top team as of this moment is the Michigan Wolverines. Spoiler alert, right? And the Michigan Wolverines actually prefer Philadelphia. So Lucas, myself, and several have been going by the way the crow flies, which would have been Buffalo, and that has had a domino effect. Now we don't know. Maybe Nebraska ends up in Buffalo. Maybe somebody else like Michigan State ends up in Buffalo. So all of those things that occur at the top of the bracketing impact everybody else at different levels. So that's one stage of things. The other stage of things is the hosting. Houston, where you live, Chancellor, is originally going to be hosted by University of Houston. They pulled a fast one this last summer and switched it to to Rice University. So now Houston can play in Houston. But otherwise, if you are hosting your regional or your first 2 rounds, you cannot go there. So for a good example, the University of South Florida will host the Tampa site in the first 2 rounds. So South Florida cannot play in Tampa this year. There are other examples. On the flip side, St. Louis can play in St. Louis because that is being hosted by the Missouri Valley Conference, not St. Louis University. So those are the basics. And as you see the assignments, hopefully that will start to make a little more sense as we go.
Rocco, thank you for that. I feel so much more smarter now with that because at times it can be confusing. So thanks for that information there. Now let's get to why we came here for, right? A reveal of the top 16 seeds, starting with the Midwest region. We'll pop that up on your screen now. And you revealed it early, but everybody already knows. The Michigan Wolverines are your number 1 overall seed. Also in the Midwest region, fielding the 68th region at least, Iowa State, Gonzaga at number 12 overall, and the Vanderbilt Commodores. Now, Lucas, I'll come to you now. When you take a look at this region, what stands out to you?
Michigan is pretty clearly that top team right now. I think if that's not the case tomorrow when the committee reveals their top 16, I think it'd be a bigger surprise than maybe anything else they could put in the 16. I think they've certainly deserved to be in that spot. They're number one in the country across 6 of the 7 team sheet metrics. They're 10-0 in quadrant 1. They have 1 loss in quadrant 2, which was at home to a tournament team in Wisconsin. They've certainly put themselves in that position to warrant that. Elsewhere in the region, Iowa State's a team that I gave a look for a 1 seed today. I haven't ended up going with someone else that we'll, I'm sure, talk to when we get there. But Iowa State's in the mix. I think they're definitely one of those. I think there's 7 teams right now that I feel I gave consideration to as 1 seeds, 3 of which were pretty easy to pencil in right away. And then this 4th 1 spot that we'll talk about later, Iowa State was in the mix there. No metrics in the top 5 is a little bit of a detractor there, but they've really great quality wins, especially these last 2 they've picked up. Both Rocco and I have talked in the past about how we like the opportunities on Iowa State's remaining schedule to potentially get up to the 1 seed line. But when we do these brackets right now, it's a snapshot of right now. And with that in mind, they're a touch behind where I would put the last number 1 seed in that regard. But there's certainly the chances they get up to that down the stretch with their schedule. 3 seed Gonzaga moves up. I had them as a 4 coming into the week. They get the benefit of a little bit extra help from other teams in this area to boost back up. But they're a team that, to Rocco's point of locations and stuff coming in, feels pretty safe in terms of being able to play their first 2 rounds, most likely in Portland, just because not many teams in this area really want to go to Portland. And they do want to go to Portland. It's like, even if they're a 4 seed, Portland's probably still going to be on the board for them. You get down to the 4 seed line, I think Vanderbilt's probably going to be on that board. They were a team that I was, as a consensus, we have them as the last team in the top 16 today. Certainly a team you could hear their name only called as we considered them for a top 16 spot tomorrow. But for me, I still have them as a 4, and I think they probably will end up there tomorrow as well.
Rocco, how about for you? What stands out to you on this region?
Yeah, a couple quick notes. Iowa State, first of all, as Lucas alluded to, right in the mix for a number 1 seed. It's a hot debate. We'll see where Houston lands. We'll see where UConn lands. But those 3 all have a strong case for that 4th spot. Really hard to separate. In the case of Iowa State, for me, and I agree with where the panel has them at number 6 overall, mainly because they've lost 2 games to teams that are not in the projected field on my website, with TCU just falling out of the field earlier this week thanks to a loss at UCF, and then Cincinnati clearly out of the field. I thought it was very easy, and again, this is a body of work exercise. It's very easy to just look at Cincinnati as a very easy comparison point. Iowa State gets completely beat there by, I think, 9 points. And Houston went in there and had no problem at Cincinnati. So that quick comparison, that's a big edge for Houston. Obviously, I think the general thinking would be we just watched them play, but it was at Hilton. That's an incredible home environment, just like it would be if it was at Houston. And so you can only take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, a game Houston played even with Iowa State, if not better, for sections of the game at least. And so you have to go a little deeper, in my opinion. And of course, the power numbers all favor Houston. On the flip side, UConn's got a lot of amazing wins at the top. I think UConn still has the best wins out of the 3. But Houston, I'm actually, I know we're probably not supposed to do this in the traditional bracketology sense, but I'm looking at tomorrow. They're playing Arizona. Koa Pete's out for sure. That figures to be a Houston win. I feel like everybody's going to have Houston by Sunday, regardless if they agree with me right now or not. On Gonzaga, just quick note there. Yes, Lucas is correct. They're one of the only teams that prefer Portland anywhere near the top 16. The interesting thing about it is that was the same location, not the same building, but the same location where the shocker heard across the world occurred when the Pilots beat the Zags. So believe me, Zag fans are anxious to get back there and get that memory erased and win some games. And lastly, Vanderbilt, I have some disagreements there. No, Vanderbilt I didn't have in my top 16. One interesting thing to look for in the actual reveal tomorrow is we found in years past that the committee had to, based on schedules and so forth of all the administrators and athletic directors who vote, they have to fly in a couple days early. They may not have accounted for the Vanderbilt loss to Missouri the other night. That was a game where they were down big, full court pressure. They end up losing by 1. If that sounds familiar, it's because the same movie happened last week when they were down 20 plus to Oklahoma at home and still only lost by 1. I think the Vanderbilt power numbers are, I like Vanderbilt, first of all, so nothing against the Commodores, but they blew out the University of New Haven. They picked on their own brother in Nashville, Lipscomb, to the tune of like 46 points. And I think some of their numbers are inflated. If they take the 20-point Oklahoma loss, like they were down by for most of the 38 minutes of the game, or the blowout to Mizzou that almost happened, I don't even think Vanderbilt's in the conversation based on those results. But otherwise, the other key about Vanderbilt, they've been playing without Duke Miles. He comes back tomorrow. Really key point right there for the team. That will be discussed in the committee room. So pay attention to how they perform from here. The other thing is Frankie Collins might be back soon as well. He was the MVP for their best road win at UCF, but he's only played 9 games. So again, this is a big time injury team. You got to know what they're bringing to the NCAA tournament when we get to the 3rd week of March.
Some very nice pieces that will be added to Vanderbilt. I know their fans are happy about that. And you mentioned your site earlier on. Make sure after the show, head on over to his website, bracketeer.org. We make sure we do plugs here on the show here. Now, moving on from the Midwest region to the East region, we'll pop that one up. And as you see, the number 2 overall seed, the Duke Blue Devils. Number 5 overall, UConn, filled out with Kansas and Michigan State. Lucas, what's your reaction to the East region?
I mean, UConn obviously takes its fall for the first time in a very long time, probably since we started doing the show. UConn falls from the number 1 seed book after its home loss to Creighton. That's probably the biggest news as far as the teams in this region. Standing. Duke obviously has stayed in really rock solid shape as a number 1 seed. I mentioned Michigan being top number 1 in the country in 6 of 7 team sheet metrics. The only team that also is number 1, and the other one is Duke. They're number 1 in the BPI. They're pretty clearly on the 1 seed line right now. UConn was definitely still a team I considered for a 1 seed right now. Its power metrics are pretty far behind the other teams that we've had considered, that we've as a consensus and as an individual considered for number 1 line. But their collection of non-conference wins is truly outstanding. They beat Illinois on a neutral. They have Kansas on the road. They beat Florida on a neutral. They beat BYU on a neutral. Like they're types of results that they were able to put together before what is a pedestrian Big East schedule this season compared to prior years. There just aren't that many opportunities in the league for them to really pile up quality. They still get St. John's again down the stretch here that maybe could vault them back to number 1 if a Houston or an Iowa or Illinois struggle down the stretch. But I think that their non-conference wins keep them pretty solidly on the 2 line, if not on the top edge of that 2 line. And if the committee really wants to value what you were able to do out of conference and prove your wins against that level of competition, where you haven't needed your conference to get quality wins, I could still see UConn on the 1 line tomorrow, although those power metrics are certainly behind their peers in that regard.
Rocco, how close is UConn for you to the number 1 seed?
Yeah, they're still right there. I mean, like I said before, they're the team that has the best set of wins at the top of the resume. You look at the wins against Kansas on the road, that's a place that most people can't go win. UConn did that. They beat Florida. That game is aging so well. They beat Illinois. And BYU still a really good win on a neutral court, even though it was in Boston. So UConn's got the wins. Obviously, the big differentiator is the home Creighton loss. Iowa State and Houston have not lost at home. That's a big difference, right? Creighton's not having a normal Creighton year by any means, and that was a quad 3 loss. So that's the thing. That's the sticking point. And we'll see what UConn can do from here. But I think that's why I stand. I agree with the panel. We're at number 5 on Bracketeer as well.
Same here.
One of the things that stands out to me too in this region is you have Kansas, who has clearly shown they can beat anybody, especially when they're at full health. Lucas, for you, the question has been, will Darren Pearson play? Won't he? For the NCAA's perspective, how will that factor in to how they judge this Kansas Jayhawks team?
I don't think it's really going to have a difference. I mean, they've been really, really good in games with him in the lineup. They've been really, really good in games without him in the lineup. Certainly Kansas will be judged on what the roster it has, healthy roster it has coming into Selection Sunday. If there were to be a big injury, as we've seen across the sport in the last 2 weeks, fingers crossed for Kansas and other teams in that regard, they'll be judged on who they have available at the time, and maybe the Darren Peterson situation, if nothing changes in terms of he plays games and doesn't finish those games, it's certainly an interesting look at, I don't know how the committee would value that, but the fact of the matter is they're really, really good without him, and they're really, really good with him. I don't think I'll see a seed boost or a seed drop depending on whatever they feel about them. Kansas, I have Kansas as a 3 seed right now. I think they're one of 2 3 seeds that I can see still playing their way onto the one-line conversation because of the schedule they have left. They still get Houston at home and Arizona on the road. I mean, those are 2 opportunities against teams ahead of them on the seed list that would really move them up. I don't expect them to win both of those games, but should they, I think they're one of the 2 teams on my number 3 seed line I could still see playing up to that mix, but certainly a team that's as dangerous as they come. And one that deserves to be in a protected seed and in good shape.
Rocco, Michigan State comes in at number 13 overall. What do you think about their resume?
Well, there's 2 ways to look at it, and it's interesting. You know, I think this is 12-13 for me was really tough. I actually stuck with the Spartans in the 12 spot, really close to Gonzaga, really tough to differentiate. I can understand the Gonzaga justification. Their road win, and one thing we didn't talk about with Gonzaga was Braden Huff's been out for quite a while, but a lot of their big wins were with him. So it was critical for the Gonzaga to win at Santa Clara, their first really important road win without Mr. Huff, because word on the street is he might be out not only through the rest of the regular season, but maybe throughout the entire postseason. So what Gonzaga brings to the tournament is very important for this decision. On the flip side, Michigan State, their best road wins at Washington. And that's just not cutting it on a road win versus road win. God bless my Huskies, but just not the year, sadly, there. But I think, you know, you look at the road record, and Michigan State's still very strong. They've only had 5 top 2 quad road games. They're 3-2, which is fine. But overall, away from East Lansing, they're still 8-2 this year, which is good. Really good. So, and Michigan State, of course, plays the Big Ten level, a few more at-bats than Gonzaga. It's a really tight comparison. And overall, I can live with the panel's decision because I didn't gain the type of clarity that I desired going into that, Chancellor.
Now, tomorrow, Rocco, of course, we have, a great college basketball slate. And that includes number 1, Michigan taking on, number 2 overall, Duke. What impact can that game have on how we see the seeding there?
I would say the winner is going to be number 1, the loser is going to be number 2, regardless. So for this very small segment of time that we have in the season, that's the case. But I know Michigan's got a blockbuster next Friday at Illinois. So the hits keep coming for the Wolverines. Whereas Duke, they settle back into ACC play. So they'll be able to, if they can get this win in DC, it's obviously bigger for them. They can maybe try to leverage that the rest of the way. A neutral court win over Michigan will be so substantial because Michigan, that Illinois example next Friday, and plus all the Big Ten games they get on top of that, they might have a case to supersede Duke. But with that one result, it'll be very difficult for the committee to ever have Michigan jump Duke again, as long as Duke holds serve after the win. So I think that's important to note. On the Michigan side, I think it's pretty obvious. If they win, they're just even further number 1 with more margin for error, and the good times keep rolling in Ann Arbor.
Absolutely. Now, coming up after the break, we'll reveal, the West and the South region. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
As you know by now, we have teamed up with BetMGM again this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we will have special offers for Field of 68 fans, including same-game parlays, best-in-class live betting, and daily odds boost. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code FIELD to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. You download the BetMGM app, you sign up using bonus code FIELD, you deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. Make this college basketball season one for the history books. Make it legendary. And don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code FIELD and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. If you're not a member of the Field of 68's On3 community, make sure to go check us out. Get access to all of Jeff Goodman and Rob Doster's written content, including coaching carousel breakdowns, info on who is and isn't entering the transfer portal, insider recruiting information from none other than Joe Tipton, X's and O's analysis of all the teams in college basketball, and access to our message board community. A 7-day trial costs you $1. The Field of 68 on 3. Get the scoop.
Welcome back to Fielding the 68 as we go through our top 16 seeds as we reveal that ahead of the NCAA's reveal tomorrow. Chancellor Johnson joined by Rocco Miller and Lucas Harkins. Now time to get to the West region. No surprise here who's at number 1. You have Arizona, number 3 overall, followed by Purdue, Nebraska, and Alabama. Lucas, what stands out to you out on the West Coast?
Well, I think Alabama makes its leap into the top 16, where I don't think we've had them at least recently. I've been close a couple times, kind of jockeying for space with a couple other teams as 15 or 16. But they get that thrilling home double overtime win over Arkansas this week. That kind of puts them back into the mix for that. They have some really great wins that have aged well. Clemson at home's a tournament level win. Kentucky at home's a tournament level win. Missouri is trending really upward for them as a win. Texas A&M's another tournament win. And then, they have the neutral site win over Illinois in non-conference that gives them that really signature result, as well as beating St. John's on the road. At a certain point, they have 7 losses. But at another point, the quantity of elite wins that Alabama has gotten this season has pushed them into the protected seed conversation for me. Arizona is the last of these really safe 1 seeds, I would say, safe picks, really easy to pick. Michigan, Duke, and Arizona at this point. They've separated themselves from the next 4 or 5 teams contending for 1 seeds. Purdue, I think, is in that now the start of the 3rd tier. We talked those first 3 1 seeds, the next 4 teams there being whoever you have as your last 1, and the first 3 2s. I think you can put in a tier together, and then Purdue is the start of that 3rd tier. No bad losses, 8-5 in quadrant 1. All of their metrics are still top 10. So they've put themselves in a good position to be on a 2-3 turn, but slightly ahead of where those other teams in the 3 seed are right now, as far as results and metrics. If I could just compare them to a Kansas, they have better metrics than Kansas does, and they have better quality wins than a Florida does at this point to stay as a 2 seed.
Rocco, what about you? Are you rocking with this West region?
I'm good with it. Yeah, actually, surprisingly, right? I'm usually picking bones here, but the Arizona concern right now, I think it's, from a bracketology perspective, it's a no-brainer. They're the 3rd in the pecking order, clearly above that pack of Houston, Iowa State, and UConn. But the Koa Pete muscle strain, we don't know how severe it is. We know he's missing a week. We know he's not playing at Houston tomorrow. Just one of too many Big 12 injury concerns that we'll continue to talk about throughout the show. But that's where my head's at. What are they actually going to be on the floor without Mr. Pete? He was so critical in that road win at UConn, the unbelievable win they had there at the start, and the opening day win over Florida. He was the man. He's integral to a lot of things they do there. And they'll be still a very great team without him, but you would hope to see him back sooner than later. On Purdue, I completely agree with Lucas. They're so right there they have to be the number 8 overall. If you try to bump Kansas or Florida up, it's just too difficult because Purdue's collection of road wins, they went to Tuscaloosa and beat that Alabama team on their home floor. They went to Wisconsin and won on that home floor. They went to USC and won, which was also a tournament level win. And they went to Iowa and won, one of Iowa's only home losses. So Purdue's, that's a great collection of road wins. I don't think anybody can match.
And they got JT Top and Texas Tech on a neutral.
They did, yes. You got those 4 true road games and then the Texas Tech at full strength win. It's just really impossible right now to put Kansas or Florida above them because of that, which is probably why you saw the media guys, our boy Jeff Goodman, scrubbing Florida down, even though they initially had them number 8 yesterday. I saw that. Anyway, moving on, Nebraska, again, right in the perfect spot. Really respect what they've done. They've been very competitive in some big games. They got the huge road Illinois win earlier, but the big games of late, of course, they continue to fall short. Fell short again at Iowa. That really took them out of the running for the 2 seed, but way too solid to be below a 3, in my opinion. And then lastly, Alabama. If there is any concerns about the Bediako issue, I would like to remind everybody that Greg Byrne has a lot of power in the committee room. He can't be in the room when Alabama's discussed, but he's a veteran of the committee. Bubba Cunningham's gone. I would argue he is the strongest voice in the room with the most weight, coming off of a year where he got 14 SEC teams into the dang dance. I have a good feeling Alabama's going to be fine. They have the resume anyway. I think the only thing you could say now is if the Bediako stuff was unfair or not. I don't believe it was. Alabama's won plenty of big games, including the Arkansas game a couple nights ago without Bediako. And even their Texas A&M win, Bediako played a bad game, right? So I think it's a little bit of an overblown thing at this point from a bracketology perspective. There's some schematic concerns that the Crimson Tide should have for their future games, but they've proven themselves, and I think they belong here.
Lucas, what do you think about Nebraska coming in at number 11 overall?
Yeah, I mean, it seems about right to me. 9 to, yeah, they're exactly 11 for me at this point. I think the thing for Nebraska is obviously the losses have started to come, the last couple weeks. It's still only 4, but all 4 of them have come since January 27th. But the result we've gotten out of that is a much easier to comprehend resume. For a long time, their resume metrics far outstripped what their predictive metrics would say. And that makes it really difficult especially when you end up talking about these teams where predictive metrics would usually win out at the top of the seed line for where a team could move up based on having higher predictives, whether that's KenPom, BPI, and T-Rank, you could move them up. But at that point, it was hard to see Nebraska where its resume said they deserved to be when they were 20-0. I mean, they probably deserve to be higher than their predictive metrics said. Now those things have really settled out. Their predictive metric average is 13.3. Their resume average is 10.7. That's put themselves in a very consistent 3-seed range. That's harder to argue with than maybe the complicated resume they had 2 or 3 weeks ago, where their resume was better than what their quality would indicate they were. So that's made things easier on the Nebraska front, at least have more confidence in where they're going to be tomorrow at the 3-4 turn is my guess.
So those are the first 3 regions. How about the last one here, the South region? And Kelvin Sampson will be very happy about this. He will have an opportunity to be right at his own crib. Houston, number 4 overall in the South region, the last 1 seed. You have Illinois, Florida, who's playing some great basketball, and Virginia. Rocco, what do you like about this region when you take a look at the South?
Well, first of all, I don't know how happy Kelvin Sampson is going to be besides sleeping in his own bed because Illinois and Florida are definitely national championship contenders. So assuming both of those were to get to Houston out of the first 2 rounds, you would have to play one of them to get to the Final Four. You'd either have a national title rematch or a gigantic big orange crush of an Illinois team. So it would be probably the strongest region when you look at 3 national championship contenders in the same region, in my opinion, getting to see these teams. But outside of that, you'll take Virginia as the 4, I suppose, but we still have a lot to learn about Virginia. So that's what I see right off the surface. We've talked about the Houston comparison throughout the show, so I'll let that subside for now. When it comes to Illinois, I think they're locked in right there at the 7 spot. I think the committee is going to view the team a lot like a lot of us do in terms of, we've seen this team when they're unstoppable. We just watched them go to USC and win by 1 million on the road. I mean, this team is like, their ceiling is through the roof. And so, unfortunately, resume-wise, they took 2 OT heartbreakers. If you want to learn about those, you can just Google Brad Underwood, and you'll find the videos of his press conferences. And we'll just leave it at that. But, all that stuff gets discussed in the room. I think when you do the eye test and all of that, they've got the wins as well. It's just too many losses right now to be a 1 seed, but stay tuned because, like I said, next week they're hosting Michigan. And then when you get to Florida, again, we talked about that a little bit with the Purdue part. Florida is pushing and pushing and pushing. For right now, they've got the road win at Vandy, which is a really nice road win, probably the best road win to date, besides maybe Alabama, that you can get in the SEC. But unfortunately, in those big non-conference opportunities, Florida barely lost at Duke, lost tight to Arizona and UConn, took a home loss in conference to Auburn. And so some of that stuff's still holding them back. But we all see these games the last month. The Gators are staying hot, as they like to say down in Gainesville. And last but not least, Virginia. And I think Virginia is the most interesting case because they've only lost 3 games, but they've got great road wins, kind of like Purdue, but maybe not at the highest level. Being able to go to Texas and SMU and Louisville and NC State and win at all those places, so impressive and so deserving of a top 16 spot. The problem is none of those teams have emerged into the top 20, I guess. I have Louisville 22 personally. And so you just want to see that last oomph to move them even higher. And they'll get that chance. Their last road game left, if you can believe it, is at Cameron. I'm not saying they're going to win there, but at least they get to swing the bat. And if they play a perfect game, who knows? Maybe they'll shock the world and beat Duke. If they do that and they finish the year 28-3, I think they're going to be able to play all the way at least to a 2 seed. So a lot in front of them. They still play NC State at home. They still play Miami at home. Those are valuable home games. And they get 2 other games at home with Wake Forest and Virginia Tech. So Virginia's got a very interesting final 5 games. And for now, they're in the right spot.
Lucas, what about you? What's your take on the South?
Yeah, I mean, to Rocco's point, there's the top 6 teams in quality metric average this season. 3 of them are in this region, with Houston, Illinois, and Florida at this point. All the 3 of those teams average at least at lowest a 6.3 average across those 3 metrics of BPI, KenPom, and Bartorvik. Like, they're in tremendously high quality region at this point if it turns out to be this way. I think Houston has earned the edge for the last 4 seed right now, but I would certainly say Illinois is the team that's under consideration for that. They were the last team I was truly considering of those 3 teams in the 2 between UConn, Iowa State, and Illinois. I'm very interested to see how that plays out tomorrow on the 2 seed line is what order the committee has, because I think it's going to tell us a decent amount of how important, especially UConn. I think they're the team I'm most interested in. Given the major difference in predictives between UConn and Iowa and Illinois, I think that could go any direction between those 3 teams. I think Illinois is probably the team that a lot of people have as that 3rd team right now. A thing that I'm interested to hear if the committee brings up at all is Illinois' worst loss this season was in overtime at home to a tournament team in Wisconsin in a game they played without Boswell and Stojakovic. I'm wondering if that's something that they'll bring up if they end up putting Illinois higher than 7th overall. I could certainly see UConn dropping to 7, having Iowa State as 4 or 5, or Illinois as 6. Those 3 teams, especially, I think I feel pretty good about Houston as the 4th one, but Iowa State, Illinois, and UConn, you can kind of put them in whatever order depending on what you want to prioritize. And right now we're guessing as best as we can of what the committee we think we'll do tomorrow. But I'm really excited to see the actual answer we'll get to where those 3 teams are tomorrow when they discuss it. And Virginia is pretty solidly the 4 seed right now. I think that they're 4-0 in quadrant 1A games. Not really many of them are like huge resume turners and boosters compared to the rest of the group. But that still stands out. The resume metrics are all top 16. Makes you think they're deserving of a top 16 spot right now. I think that they're a team that's probably going to get the edge to be over maybe some other teams that are in contention to get into the top 16 tomorrow, but they are my number 16.
Lucas, I asked Rocco earlier about the big matchups that we have tomorrow, including Michigan and Duke. We'll also see Arizona at Houston tomorrow. What impact, as far as movement, can that have on that final result?
I think first of all, I think if Houston wins, they're obviously going to be the number 1 seed line. If Houston loses, I think we'll have the conversation again about who can jump in to the mix there. And I think that's where we'll get the answer tomorrow between those 3 teams of Iowa State, Illinois, and UConn. Depending on where the committee has those 3 teams, will give us a better idea of the head-to-head resume-to-resume comparison between Houston and that current number 5, whoever they may have at 5. And you could have that same conversation with Arizona. I do feel better about Arizona's standing because it has more of those quadrant 1A wins compared to Houston. It comes in with better resume metrics, perfectly even predictive metric average between those 2. I could potentially see Arizona staying on the 1 seed line, whereas I think Houston, we'd have a little bit more of a conversation between them and whoever the committee has at 5. Because starting at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, all of our bracketology top 4 seeds will change. No matter what we think they deserve to be at that point in time, as soon as 1 o'clock hits, all of our bracketologies will start with the same 16 teams in the same order, and we'll adjust from there moving the rest of the season.
So that wraps up Fielding the 68's top 16 seeds. But for you, Rocco, who might be missing? Who's a team that maybe can sneak in? Obviously, we've seen injuries, playing a part. Even a team like Texas Tech, right, who's just lost their best player in JT Top and one of the best players in the country. Whether it's Tech or another team that might be out there, who might be missing from this list that can still slide up?
Well, I'll address that in just 1 sec. One last thought on the 16 we did at the 1 seed level. I think if you see UConn tomorrow, there's somewhat of a percentage chance that the voting may have happened before the Creighton result. We've seen that in previous years. So I'm not going to be shocked if UConn is the fourth number one due to their process. And obviously, we've already, as a group, voted on Houston, so I wouldn't be shocked to see them. Iowa State would be the one surprise for me, so I just wanted to cover that. But yes, Texas Tech, this is the big subject, no doubt about it. JT Toppin, sadly, down for the year with an ACL. They lose to Arizona State in the process. But more importantly, there's two ways to look at this. The NCAA is going to look at it as, what is Texas Tech bringing to the tournament? Well, they're only going to have 5 regular season games to look at, unless you want to throw Arizona State in there. They were losing by a handful of points when he went down. So you could throw that in if you would like to. But the 5 remaining games, on paper, I don't know that we're going to learn that much unless it's a good thing for Texas Tech. The 3 home games are TCU, Kansas State, and excuse me, I had it right here.
Cincinnati.
It's Cincinnati. Yeah, so those 3 games, they're widely expected to win, even without Toppin. Let's just call it what it is. And then the road games are home run opportunities at BYU and at Iowa State, not expected to win those games. So let's just play it out like they go cookie cutter 3-2 with the 3 home wins and the 2 road losses. They're basically going to be in the same spot. Committee's really not going to know exactly what to do with them. I think, the only real precedent we have, you have to go way back to Cincinnati when Kenyon Martin broke his leg on the last day of the season. And they were a clear number 1 seed, if not the number 1 overall. And the committee basically moved them all the way to a number 2 seed. If they did the exact same thing, which again, we're so many light years past Kenyon Martin. We love you, Kenyon, but we're in 2026 now. We just don't know what they're going to do. They right now, in my book, there's no doubt about it. Texas Tech belongs in the top 16 based on what they've accomplished. They beat Duke. They beat Houston. I mean, this is crazy. And so my point is, if they end up a 5 and they beat Arizona, exactly. So at Arizona, one of the best wins in the country. So they've earned it to be there tomorrow. But if they're not there, that means they had time to process the injury, assess the injury, and penalize the Red Raiders. And that's going to be really what they have to face the next 5 games and the Big 12 tournament before we get bracket.
Lucas, as we get ready for the NCAA's reveal, what's your biggest question mark heading into Saturday?
Well, it is Texas Tech, quite frankly. I mean, I had 17 teams for 16 spots when I was going through my top 16 as kind of projecting what I think the committee will do tomorrow. And when it gets down to that, I ended up, to Rocco's point of the 1 seed drop of Kenyon Martin 26 years ago, is what we have as a precedent.
Seems like yesterday.
So I was 3. I didn't know what a bracket was. So I think I ended up with Texas Tech as my 17th overall. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me if they're 13th tomorrow. I think they're the team that I think has the highest range of possibilities when it comes down to it. I'm sure it'll be discussed, regardless if they're not in the top 16. I think that'll be a conversation that the committee discusses, on the air, on TV afterward. Is what teams were you considering? I think would be, remiss to not have mentioned, if Texas Tech isn't in there, that'd be okay, this is what we thought of the Toppin situation right now. I think it is very interesting, given that they haven't played a full game without him heading into what is the bracket preview, where typically at this point we've discussed with other injuries that we'll learn by the time we get to Selection Sunday, what they'll be graded on is what the roster they have healthy. We don't have really an opportunity to grade Texas Tech on that right now. So it is truly if something were to happen in the next 5, 7, 10 years or whatever, where there is an injury in a conference tournament coming into a Selection Sunday where a team hasn't gotten a chance, this is going to be the most recent precedent than Kenyon Martin, is going to be the bracket previews, the closest we'll get to figuring out what a team might have to deal with if they get an injury in a conference tournament leading into Selection Sunday, as significant as this one is. The committee has a chance to give us some precedent there for the future. as far as what they do with Texas Tech. Is that something you've been thinking about at all, Rocco?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the only slight difference. The only slight difference is that there's a little nuance to the 1 going to the 2, because the 1 seed's supposed to be the dominant force in the region. This is like a 4 or 5 conversation where they're almost not that penalized because you're going to the same pod. You do have to play a harder first game against a 12 instead of 13, but I think it's a little less controversial in the committee's, to the committee's delight, I'm sure.
Of course.
But yeah, like you're spot on. I mean, if you compare Texas Tech and Vanderbilt right now, there's no question by the numbers and by the comparisons that Red Raiders are the choice. And so that's what will be fascinating about tomorrow. And the good news too is, like, the last few years, I believe they've been sharing the next 4 out. So we're basically going to see the full top 20.
They've listed like 3 or 4 teams that they've been like, oh, we're also talking about so and so and so and so. And then you get some idea of who the 5s are, even if they're not saying who the 5s are.
Exactly. Yep. That'll be interesting.
Yeah. I'm certainly excited to see what the committee does tomorrow. Now, I'm excited to see who's on the bubble, which we'll talk about right after the break. Stick with us.
As you know by now, we have teamed up with BetMGM again this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we will have special offers for Field of 68 fans, including same-game parlays, best-in-class live betting, and daily odds boost. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code FIELD to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. You download the BetMGM app, you sign up using bonus code FIELD, you deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. Make this college basketball season 1 for the history books. Make it legendary. And don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code FIELD and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Are you trying to follow everything happening in college basketball? It can be overwhelming. That's where the Field of 68 Daily comes into play. The Daily is your go-to source for recruiting news, game analysis, portal updates, and much, much more. For just $50 a year, you get access to the same information that your favorite coaching staff is subscribed to. Quality content can be hard to find in the college basketball space. The Daily is here to help. Make sure you subscribe today.
Welcome back to Fielding the 68. My name is Chancellor Johnson, joined by Lucas Harkins and Rocco Miller. Now time to get to that bubble. Lucas, we'll start with you. Who is your last 4 teams in the bubble?
Yes, my last 4 teams in right now, I've gone with USC, Santa Clara, UCLA, and TCU. An interesting mix of teams, I would say, at this point. USC is a team that I felt a little bit more confident in getting in the field than maybe others of late. And I think that their metrics obviously took a big hit this week. Obviously, losing to Illinois is losing to Illinois, but losing to Illinois by the margin they did is a blow. They're still 37th in wins above bubble, which, I mean, I'm sure you've heard on social media this week is going to be a very important metric, as it was last season. That's one that I think gets them in better shape for selection than necessarily seeding right now. They're one of the lowest teams in overall predicted metrics, averaging at 52. At this point, what has USC a little lower for me is they just don't really have that many wins over the field. It's just 2 all season. They won at Wisconsin, which is obviously aging well, and they beat Indiana at home. Both those are kind of wins over, 7 seed and probably a 10 or 11 seed in Indiana. So that puts them a little bit lower towards the cut line than some others. Driving down, Santa Clara, again, doesn't really have a lot of quality on the top of its resume. It does have a quadrant 4 loss. But top 42 teams in the WAB last season made the tournament. They're 43 right now, close enough to that. They have, their metrics are pretty universally solid, bubble-ish, which gives them a little bit less reason for exclusion than some of these other teams, despite the quadrant 4 loss. UCLA, kind of in a similar picture of, doesn't really have great quality wins overall, like in terms of quantity. Obviously, they have a great win. But I believe the Purdue win is their only win currently over the field. Their second quadrant 1 win is winning at Washington, who isn't really close to the board. But the Purdue win gets them in the mix. Certainly WAB of 45. I think they're getting dragged down a bit by KPI at 64. It's their only metric outside of the top 50. So I think that's one of those outliers that I personally would just throw out, given how much different it is from their other 6 numbers on their team sheet. And if you throw that number out a little bit, or at least give it a lot less credence than 1 part of 7, when it's kind of paints a different picture than the others, their picture looks a little bit better. In that case, TCU, kind of the polar opposite, 49th in WAB, lowest of the teams I have in the field. They have lower predicted metrics, but what they have is just outstanding wins at the top of their resume, which puts them in the field for me ahead of some of these teams that, like a team like Ohio State, who I'll fast forward is my first team out. Ohio State doesn't have a quadrant 1 win this season. And you compare that to, their best wins over Wisconsin. You compare that to a TCU that has beaten Wisconsin on neutral floor, but also has the wins over Iowa State and Florida. 2 teams that are, either a 2 or 3 seed and contending for 1 seeds, at least in Iowa State's case, if not Florida with a strong finish. Those 2 top end wins are as good as any is going to be able to brag about this close to the cut line, and gets TCU the edge for me over some others.
Rocco, your last 4 teams in looks a little bit different. Why?
Well, I'm a man of the process, Chancellor, and this is where the process led me today. Santa Clara headlines it, and they've been a team that I get to see regularly. I've called a couple of their games as well, and they've obviously got their scars. The one scar, the game I called Loyola Chicago. We'll be talking about that till the final day. If this remains interesting. But they do have the home win over St. Mary's, which is a win over the field of some variety. They have 3 wins in the top 2 quadrants. Nobody close to the field, but they demolition derbied Xavier, who's a Big East team. They were up by 40 in that game. They won at Pacific. They won at Washington State. Decent quad 2 road wins here in the conference. But they're big games next Wednesday at St. Mary's. So I will be there, live coverage. Can't wait. Trying for the sweep of the Gales. That'll be a big-time feather in the cap if the Broncos can pull it off. Pretty unprecedented for them to win in that building as well. But the thing that's impressive is, you see the 2-5 record in the top 2A quads, but from 2B to quad 3, they've played 14 games and they've passed every test in that section, 14-0. That's actually way harder to do than I think a lot of people give it credit for, and maybe the committee won't. But I think the WAB, the tool that they're in love with, favors the Broncos somewhat. They're still 43 there. They've been tinkering around that top 40. But obviously that's going to drastically change based on the St. Mary's game next week. And then they have a good road game at San Francisco, their rival, tomorrow. So watch out for that. Ohio State squeezes into the field. I get it. They're 0-8 in quad 1, not fun to look at. But they have beat Wisconsin, USC, and UCLA at home, all tournament level wins in my book. It's just enough to squeeze in right now. They have the 1 bad loss at Pittsburgh. I'm sure they don't like to hear about that, but I think with 3 wins over the field, there's just enough evidence. Obviously, you want to see something away from home. I don't think if they get to the finish line like this, there's going to be a spot for them. But based on the available options, I thought they had done just enough, because there's 2 teams in particular when we get to first 4 out that have played their way out to open the door for Ohio State. My next team is New Mexico. And part of the New Mexico inclusion for me is the road win at VCU. VCU is so close to getting in. If they win tonight, they're probably in tomorrow. They were the better team by far in the Siegel Center. Very impressive road win. And they don't get the opportunities in non-conference. That was their big one. They go to Grand Canyon and win. That's aging well. Grand Canyon just went to San Diego State and won. They've also got quad 2 wins at Colorado State and UNLV. So they have 4-2 in the top 2 quad true road games. A lot more proof in the road pudding than most of the bubble options. They also destroyed Santa Clara without Jake Ensminger down in Albuquerque. So that gives them at least one piece of evidence against the bona fide, somewhat field. And then lastly, like Lucas, I won't go further on UCLA. I think it's pretty clear. They only had the 1 home win against the field, but they have gone to Washington, Oregon, and Penn State and won on the road. It's better than nothing. Those are quad 2 wins on the road. Obviously, they will end with 2 USC games. I think we should point that out because Lucas had USC in his last 4. Those 2 games will be huge for both teams if somebody can sweep it. If they split it, then we might be in the same spot.
Well, here's how the consensus last 4 in stacks up. You have you have Santa Clara, UCLA, Auburn, and TCU. Now let's get to the first 4 out. Rocco, we'll go back to you on this. which teams do you have in the mix?
So for me, VCU's won 10 in a row, but they've had 5 chances to play teams in the field. They're 0-5. So they're basically Indiana State from a couple of years ago with Robbie Avila and Coach Schertz, who had the same exact record and didn't get in. So there's no precedent to put VCU in based on some of that part of the board, but the 10-game winning streak has mattered a lot for tools like the wins above bubble and the strength of resume. They've worked their way up to 47. Tonight, I haven't seen a situation like this in a while where you have 1 game left in your runway. That's the golden ticket game, and that's tonight. There's no question about it. If they get that win tonight and St. Louis closes strong and that win holds up, I have no problem putting them in the field. They're 13-6 against the meaningful games. They have a couple wins in Quad 2A. This will clearly be their first Quad 1 win. It'll be a road win against the field. Just a huge night for VCU. So I'm putting them first team out because if they win tonight, they're in. TCU, Lucas did a great job breaking them down. The one thing I'm struggling with is, they have a huge variety of results, so we won't go through all of those. But at the end of the day, they're 9-9 in their impactful games, but they have the home opening night loss to New Orleans, which is a little bit out of bounds. And it's tough because you'd like to see them at least be 10-9 or something, and then maybe throw that loss in there. At 9-9, and then you throw the loss in, it's tough. Plus the wins above bubble has them closer to 50 than 40. Makes it a little tougher as well. And, losing to UCF the other night just kind of swung things in the record columns a little off kilter as well. They're 6-8 in the top 2 quads, which is enough wins, but not the winning percentage or 500 percentage that you're hoping for. And as great segue there, because now we're going to talk about Auburn. Auburn, in their top 18 games, and again, they have the hardest schedule in the country. And they have one of the greatest wins you can get right now with how Florida's playing. Winning at the Swamp is going to – if they get anywhere near 500, don't worry. I'll be putting them back in the field. But for now, they're so far out of bounds with the losing. Like, they're 8-12 in their meaningful games. Last year, Texas got in with a 10-13 record. So, again, I'm accounting for that. But you look at you look at that record, it's just so hard to justify putting them in the field. They're 5-9 away from Auburn. There's just the records are just so poor. At a certain point, losing has to matter. On the flip side, Greg Burns in the room, and even though Auburn's his rival, the SEC comes first, and that scares me because maybe he will have his way when it comes to the Tigers. Last but not least, California, my neighbors here. 4th team out. Again, about the win at Miami over UCLA and home UNC. But the numbers are, they're just 2-5 in top 2 quad road games. That loss at Syracuse really hurt last week. And the big thing is the 331 ranked non-conference strength of schedule historically is not on their side whatsoever.
Lucas, where does Auburn fall for you? I know you don't have them on your first 4 out either. It might be.
I actually have Auburn in the field. I have Auburn in the field and above my last 4 in currently, in part just because their seeding got a boost once they were selected, because they're averaging 32.3 across quality metrics, which is much better than a lot of the bubble teams at this point. They're 42nd in web, which is, as it stands, last year all top 42 in the web on Selection Sunday made the tournament, including the controversial North Carolina, which was exactly 42. So Auburn, I think, is still in the mix on that front. Obviously, I think they're a team that we will learn the last couple weeks here. We'll figure out who they are in terms of what they're going to make the field. Because if they stay 2 games above 500, I think that's going to be very, very difficult to get into the field. If they're able to pile up a couple more victories, they'll get in. They obviously have tremendous quality at the top. They win at Florida. That's outstanding. But in addition to that, they have a home win over NC State. They have a neutral site win over St. John's. Those are really quality wins over single-digit seeds right now that give them an edge to be in the field. And then I think their seeding gets a little bit of a boost by the predictive metrics once they are actually selected. But I think Rocco makes plenty of good points regarding, an 8-12 record against the upper 3 quadrants, regardless of how disproportionate that is to 14 of those games being in quadrant 1, 10 of them in quadrant 1A. The strength of schedule makes it very, very difficult, but obviously wins and losses have to count for something at some point. For now, I have Auburn in the field, but I totally get anyone's rationale as far as leaving them out of the field on their total amount of losses.
Let's get to the consensus first. Wait, I'm sorry.
I'm just curious how often are they allowed to lose? Like they just lose forever, but that Florida win's more important. It's like you can lose 10 games, but we care more about the Florida win. It's just maddening. But
I think it's
the
3.
good news
I
is
think the number's 3. I think the numbers
Okay,
they got to
all
get
right.
to 3 games over. And I think right now we've seen teams get in that are 3 games over 500. And I think right now it's because they're only 26 games into the season. Like I look at the win percentage more than I do wins above 500 right now. And like the win percentage of 14-12 is somewhat akin to what 19-16 would be. So I think that's where I have Auburn a little bit positively projecting. But yeah, if they're 2 games over 500 on Selection Sunday, I will have them out of the field.
Yeah, when 17 and 15 worked for Vanderbilt, back 9 years ago, and so to do that, you got to beat some big time teams. They've got the one huge one. You could argue the St. John's win's huge as well. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm definitely monitoring that, but nobody's getting in with more than 15 losses. The good news is that we need to share as well is Auburn in their runway left. There's only 5 games left, I think. 3 of them are non-tournament games. So Oklahoma, LSU, and I think one of the Mississippis are left. If they handle those business, they'll be fine.
Well, here's a look at the consensus first 4 out. We have Ohio State, New Mexico, VCU, and California. Those are the consensus first 4 out. How about the next 4 out? The consensus there, that would be San Diego State, Virginia Tech, Seton Hall, and West Virginia. Quickly on this, Lucas, what stands out to you on the next 4 out?
Yeah, San Diego State's a team that I still have in my first 4 out. They're my 4th team out right now. Down to 52nd in the WAB makes that difficult. But there's opportunities left for them. I think there's a few of these teams that are on the outside looking in that I feel have resumes that will sort themselves out. Rocco already talked about Ohio State. 4 of their last 5 games are against tournament level teams. That will figure itself out. New Mexico, as Rocco talked about already, they still get Utah State on the road. They get San Diego State at home. San Diego State similarly goes at New Mexico and at Boise State and gets Utah State at home. These Mountain West teams will figure themselves out, I think, by the time we get to Selection Sunday. But San Diego State has the opportunities to climb, I think, best of that next 4 out of our consensus next 4 out, has the best chance to climb into the field.
Rocco, quickly here, anything jump out for you on the consensus next 4 out?
Just, I think Seton Hall's toast. They're not even close to that for me after the home loss to DePaul. Just almost a nail in the coffin TKO punch right there from the Blue Demons. But I will say the team that kind of came out of nowhere, it's still going to take a miracle. But if Arizona State can somehow win at Hilton, the Sun Devils will be very interesting because they beat Texas on a neutral. They beat Santa Clara on a neutral. They have a Texas Tech win now. And, they beat Oklahoma neutral, which is not nothing. And so if they win at Iowa State, I know it's like a 1%. It's a 1%er, but it's an at bat. And all you need right now is at bat. Arizona State. Yep.
Well, Rocco, I went to Arizona State. So that's music to my ears. So you're saying there's a chance.
Yes, but I would also say you should probably get a room reservation in Las Vegas in April for the Crown Tournament, just in case.
Got it. Understood. Rocco, we'll stick with you before we get out of here. What games will you be monitoring for the weekend?
I'm going to be bubble focused. VCU St. Louis, I couldn't have said it better earlier about VCU. Santa Clara, San Francisco tomorrow. Again, it's a big rivalry. The Dons have been playing really poorly most of the last 2 weeks. They did win one against San Diego, but this game means a lot to their pride. Santa Clara is going to get San Francisco's best shot. So they're going to really have to bring their A game and not look ahead to the St. Mary's game next Wednesday. That's a big one to monitor here in my backyard. UCF, Chancellor, I've noticed, I've been paying attention. You ask a lot of UCF questions. They've got a sneaky tough one at Utah, and I'm still not 100% sure if UCF's going to make it to the finish line. Impressive win earlier this week against TCU, but that's a tricky mountains trip. Utah just got to win. They've been trying to break through all year at West Virginia to kind of ruin the Mountaineers' momentum. So watch out for that UCF trap game. And then Texas A&M, they're a team that keeps fading. Miraculously pulls out a game against Ole Miss where they were deep in the hole the other night. Otherwise, we would have had a serious Aggies conversation today. Well, they're going to an Oklahoma team. I think that's a dangerous game. Oklahoma's played so much better. And here's the big one. We've been circling this for 5 weeks on the mid-major show. Winthrop at High Point, the rematch for all the marbles in the Big South. That will be very intense. Winthrop whooped them by 17 in Rock Hill. We just talked about the entire breakdown of the game. If you missed it, check out yesterday's episode of the Mid-Major Show right here on the Field of 68.
To your point about UCF, for a team that's trying to get back to the NCAA tournament for the first time in years, you have to beat the worst team in the conference. I understand it's on the road. Road games are hard to win, but you got to get that
altitude
done. For you, Lucas,
it's the altitude. It's the altitude.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Lucas, how about you? Which games will you be monitoring?
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky at Auburn's huge. Texas at Georgia's really big. I mean, obviously, probably the game of the weekend Rock already talked about. In terms of bubble impact is VCU St. Louis, because it's the kind of game that can totally shift or eliminate a team, and you don't have a lot of those in February. It's probably the highest leverage game of the whole weekend. There aren't a whole lot of really fun battles in the Big East this season. There's really only 3 tournament level teams. But you get UConn going on the road at Nova. That's a big one. Come Sunday, big bubble opportunity for Ohio State going at Michigan State. There's not a whole lot on the docket Sunday, but that's a big one. Iowa at Wisconsin also fills out your Big Ten Sunday if you're looking for high major hoops that day.
Absolutely. It will be a fun weekend. Thanks for watching Fielding the 68. For Chancellor Johnson, Rocco Miller, and Lucas Harkins, we'll see you next time.